welcome to episode number 30 of the Knitting Teaspoon podcast. I am Liesbeth, your host, and this is a podcast which is all about knitting, sewing, basically any crafts you can think of. Although at this week I think it's only knitting and very exciting, a little bit of crochet. Usually this is a weekly podcast, but last week I was feeling so poorly that I skipped an episode, so apologies if you expected a podcast last week. I just wasn't able to do so. But now I'm back and I have a little bit, well, I don't think I have that much more to share with you guys because honestly I felt so bad last week. I didn't even feel like knitting, which means I felt terrible. Usually knitting is like the last thing I give up when I'm not feeling too well. So, but let's dive right into the contents of this episode. This is a sweater that I knit myself. That's what I'm wearing. It's the Hey Hey My My sweater by Reiko Kuwamura. It's the first sweater I knit for myself, second sweater I ever knit. Let's not go into what happened to the first one, but this is the first sweater that I knit for myself. It's knit out of Viking of Norway baby wool, baby yarn. It's 100% wool yarn from a Norwegian brand that I bought when I was in Sweden. So I don't think it's very accessible worldwide, but you know, maybe if you're interested, it's a worsted weight yarn, and the pattern is actually written for a heavier weight yarn. So if you want to knit this pattern, it's actually a faster knit than what I did, because I thought, this is my first sweater, let's alter it and just knit a different size and calculate how many stitches I had to do. But you know, it worked out. I think it looks fine. So there you go. I have this sweater. You may have already seen this sweater because I also wore it at the first episode I had in this podcast, which is so long ago already. But yeah, you guys, it's turning into autumn slowly but steadily, and it's amazing. It's sweater weather again. I love it. Which brings me to one very sad little point of sweater weather. I do have a finished object, and it is my summer top. Yeah, it's finished now. Actually, I finished it not this week on Tuesday, but the week before on Tuesday. And here it is. It looks very nice. I think I still have the progress keeper on it where I was when I last showed it to you here. So I still had a good bit of knitting to do, and most of it happened over not last weekend but the weekend before, when I was still feeling relatively okay. My brother had a celebration that I went to, and I was away visiting family for most of the weekend, which meant a lot of traveling time and a lot of time to knit. So yeah, most of this knitting was done there, and after all the knitting I added this crochet edge along the bottom. It's supposed to keep the knitting from rolling in, but it doesn't completely prevent it, but at least it helps a little bit because it's less bad than it was before. I added the edge. It's also along the top of the top of the top. Funny play on words. And along the sleeve edges, and I just think it just adds a little detail to the top. Makes it look a little bit more cute and more feminine. Not that it didn't look feminine enough anyway, but you know, I like it. So with that, this is actually my first bit of crochet, I think, on the podcast. So there you go. I do crochet sometimes, not that much, but yeah, it's finished now and I'm quite proud of it. Yeah. So this is also a project that would count towards the more than one craft long, because as you can see, the majority of this top is knitted, but there is a tiny part of crochet. So yay, I do crochet sometimes. And yeah, it was fun to add a little bit of a crochet detail to this top. So there you have it, finished objects, and now I can take off the marker and actually start wearing it. That would be very nice. Although, as I said, the weather is turning, so I think it's a bit too cold by now to really wear it. It's not that cold yet, but yeah, maybe not sleeveless top weather anymore. Anyway, very proud to have this off the needles. Still have 20 grams left, so I think this weighs around 80 grams. 80 grams lace weight yarn, so I think I might knit a similar one out of fingering weight yarn at some point. So after finishing this top, I felt horrendous. So I didn't feel like knitting. I didn't want to do anything, and also I didn't want to make something and then somehow remember how horrible I felt when I made it. I feel like that's something I'm usually not very concerned with, but somehow I just felt so bad that I thought, no, I don't want to have made anything while feeling so bad. So instead I used my new nastepinne and wound all of my hand-spun yarn into cakes. So maybe you've seen these pictures on Instagram because I've posted them there, and there's a few more cakes of my hand-spun, but they are currently connected to a project. So while I was feeling sick, I was just wrapping loads and loads of yarn into cakes. One of these cakes is upside down, I think. So I don't know if you can see this properly now, but there you go, four big cakes, and I have 2 smaller cakes of yarn. And out of this yarn, I am knitting a Dusala cardigan, which is a pattern by Osa Tricosa. Yeah, it's the person who wrote the Ziggurat book. But first of all, since it's hand spun and it's a light fingering weight, I didn't know basically what gauge I would get, so I was hoping to just be able to knit on the fingering weight version of the Ziggurat. And yeah, so I swatched. Here's my swatch. Did this out of one of the smaller cakes that I wound. I did not completely use it. I did not weigh how much yarn I used for this one, but you can kind of see the effect that this yarn is creating. It's well, it's slowly altering from color to color, so it's kind of how do you call it again? A gradient yarn. Kind of self-striking. I don't know, but I think the effect overall is quite pretty. There's these golden-ish colors, and there's these grayish tones and the pinks. I think it will look very nice as a quite neutral cardigan. Although I think in general there's a little bit more pink than in this section, but we will see how the cardigan turns out in the end. I will love it anyway. So let me just show you what the cardigan is supposed to look like, because I accidentally hit a button on my computer with putting the skeins down and stopped my microphone. So this is the Dusala cardigan out of the Ziggurat book by Osa Tricosa. I don't think with sharing this picture I'm giving anything away out of the book, except for maybe some commercials who maybe buy this book as well. I mean, I think it's a very good book. It was a little bit of getting used to the pattern. She uses some techniques and some abbreviations that are not very common, and that's a little bit tricky in the beginning, but I feel like it's very potato chippy now. It's quite doable to knit it. I still need to keep my mind on it a little bit too much to take it with me for the commute to work, but yeah, otherwise it's quite an enjoyable knit. So here is my cardigan, and I know it doesn't really look like much yet. So I guess this would be the best way to show it. I'm also kind of mid-row, which doesn't necessarily make it easier to show you guys. Maybe I should have thought about that before I started recording this podcast, but I obviously didn't. So I'm knitting this on the recommended gauge, which I think is 26 stitches and 36 rows in 10 centimeters or 4 inches. But the pattern recommends or states you would use 3 millimeter or US 2.5 size needles for this. I had to use 2.5 millimeters or US 1.5 needles because I apparently knit a lot looser than the person who wrote this pattern, but it works anyway. So I'm still working on the increases around the neckline. So I really like how the button band is already attached, and I knit the body band. No, it's a button band. Liesbeth, don't be silly. So here's the button band, and it goes all the way along the neck, and you kind of attach as you go. I don't know if I missed any information on this. It's supposed to be in a contrast color for this cardigan, but because I'm knitting this cardigan out of my hand spun yarn, I didn't want to use another color because I don't have a contrast color. I just have the colors that are in my hand spun. But I just used a piece of hand spun, and this is one of the other colors that is in the hand spun, but it looks like I have a contrast color anyway, because of the nature of the color transitions in my hand spun yarn. And in the parts where it was at all possible, because you weren't doing any crazy shaping kind of thing, I tried to alternate skeins every 2 rows, so you can see a slight striping effect here, but I don't think it's too obvious or too, yeah, I think it looks quite nice. Also, the skeins itself, they change color quite rapidly, so it's not necessarily as if 2 rows later you will go back to exactly the same color. It might be a little bit closer, but I think it was a good plan to start alternating skeins with these. I'm alternating just 2 skeins, even though I have 4 that look quite different, but I figured that these 2 look quite similar because they both have a lot of dark barber pulling, and these 2 also look quite similar, so I have one of these connected and one of these connected, and once the first one of this runs out, I will go into the second one of this type, and then also the same story for this yarn. If the first one of these runs out, then I will start using the second one of these, and then hopefully I will have enough to finish the cardigan. I think I should have plenty of yarn, so it should be good. So yay, cardigan on the way. Yeah, really feels good to be working with my hand spun yarn right away, and it's also very nice that it's caked because it just knits so nicely. Must say, I used a very thick crochet hook instead of a Nuster pinel before, and this works so much easier, but then again, winding 1600 meters or probably more, yeah, my wrists were hurting after a while. But then again, I think it's worth it, and I didn't feel like doing anything else anyway, so yeah, I think it's fine. I really like this Nuster pinel. So thank you, Lily Pond Yarns, for sending me this as a prize for your giveaway. So there's 2 more projects that have received a little bit of love over the past 2 weeks, and one of them is my blanket. I just put away the entire blanket thing, but here's the square that I've been working on. So yeah, I think none of this square existed when I last podcasted. I'm not completely sure about that, but yeah, it's coming along nicely, and just attached the 5th color. There are 7 colors in total in each square, so it's coming along nicely, and 1/2 square more done, 1/2 less to go. You know, these type of sock yarn blankets, they take a long time. I will insert a picture here of my blanket because it just makes it a little easier for ones who join in for the first time. I think. So yeah, like it. And there's also another new cast on since last week because I needed a new commuting project because I could bring my top because it's quite light and easy to knit on. And now I'm knitting on a sock. And this sock I'm knitting it out of some Lana Grossa Magico 2 Meilenweit yarn, this yarn. I don't remember the color and I think it's some number, so I'll just pop it in the screen and in the description below. Oh, it's here. There's a number there if you're interested. The skein will go into some more exciting colors than this because this looks like a bit of a greenish blue down here, and then there's a darker blue, almost black here, and then it goes back to the same color. But this is what the skein looks like. So there's somewhat more interest going on in this skein than you can see from the toe of this sock. And I'm knitting this sock for my boyfriend. I was having some trouble finding a new project to cast on, and I just held up like 5 skeins of yarn, like pick any one of these and I'll knit socks out of them. And then my boyfriend, he picked 3 socks out of the 5, and he thought these would look nice, and then he picked exactly those that were supposed to become socks for him, and not the 2 that were supposed to become socks for me. So I think I chose colors for his socks quite well because he selected those colors first. Also, he has way less socks than me. At least hand-knit by me socks. So yeah, another pair of socks on the go. One more thing that arrived in the post just today that I'm quite excited about is these D-rings. So yeah, I'm going to try and see if I can use these in my project bags, because a while ago I was sewing some project bags and I was trying to get some loops on them, and then I realized it would be so much nicer if I actually had the metal stuff to, you know, connect a piece with which you can carry your bag and a strap. And yeah, so now I bought these D-rings. I have some more of these, and they finally arrived today. And yeah, I'm going to try and see if I can make a new project bag, but this weekend will be crazy, so I'm not sure if I will get any sewing done. Probably not, but who knows, maybe in a few weeks time. I'm quite excited about that. But anyway, that was all that I had to share with you this week. I want to thank you so much for joining me. It really means a lot that you take some time out of your day and spend it with me. If you leave comments, that's amazing. Yeah. Also, I would like to remind you all that there is a Ravelry group. I'm not very active at Ravelry group or any social media because, well, I'm just not married to my computer and I don't want to be. It's that easy. Anyway, there is a Ravelry group. It's called KnittingTeaspoon podcast group on Ravelry. And that's where you can join in on the knit along, or the more than one craft along rather. I realized I said something like use at least 100 meters of yarn for this craft along, which I now realize does not necessarily make sense. I mean, if you make something and if you're sewing something or making embroidery, sewing something and you use handmade buttons, then it would totally be allowed in this more than one craft long, but 100 meters is something that completely doesn't make sense. So I don't know, maybe use at least 2 hours to work on your project. I don't know. I just think it's too difficult to check, so please enter any projects you feel like you used more than one craft, and please explain what the 2 crafts are if they are not very, very obvious. So yeah, I think that's all for today, and thanks again for joining me, and I hope to see you again next week, and bye!